Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge, and of course, another edition of Damo's Team Talk, this time coming out of round 18. And it was an interesting round, one that we spoke about over the past few weeks in terms of we're heading into a period now where injuries, suspensions, and the like tend to crop up. And it seems as though we've preempted this with an onslaught of injuries and a possible lengthy suspension to a very popular ruckman. So we will get into that and more, and of course we will cover it off in our weekly edition of SuperCoach Edge, which will be dropping on either Tuesday or Wednesday at this stage, so keep an eye out for that. But just in terms of the surface level side of things when it comes to how we performed, we ended up scoring 2,294 for the round, which was below par, unfortunately, and a number of factors here that we must touch on. And of course, the injuries were definitely one of those that curtailed most of our round in itself. But of course, season rank, we did slide 1,503 spots to now sit just inside the top 10K, ranked 9,984th overall. But let's have a look how we performed line by line and really analyze what the hell went wrong. So from defense, Jordan Clark, he popped off for a nice score. And it seems as though every second week now he's performing, and on the odd week, he is just throwing in the towel virtually and clocking off early. It seems a bit that way. But I'm probably being a little bit too harsh looking at his recent scores, which has been 145, a 50, and a 125 over his past three. But hopefully that trend doesn't continue, because we will be disappointed if he goes back to a sub 100 game, and especially a sub 50 game. That'll be very, very disappointing. But he did rebound with that very nice score of 125 off the back of the 50 last week. So tip of the old cap to you, Clarko. Alongside him, Dane Zorko just nudged across the ton with a 107. We'll take it at that stage. I think at this stage, it seems as though this is kind of, par for the course for Zorko. He's had very rarely any ceiling games apart from his starting 3 games of the season and the odd couple here and there, but his past 3 games kind of give an insight into how he's performing with a 105, 100 on the dot and a 107 on the weekend against Carlton. So I was expecting a bigger game from him personally, and just was not to be. Likewise with Lachie Whitfield, whilst he got a whole stack of footy in his hands, he unfortunately only was able to have a score very similar to Zorko with a 105. He ended up having 32 disposals, 11 marks, 1 tackle, and 1 free against. And I assume, not looking at the stats, that his efficiency was a little bit down, because very out of the ordinary here, because normally when we see Whitfield get his hands on the footy that much, he scores about 120 plus easily. So disappointing there, considering he is one of the more efficient players in football at the moment, but is what it is. Just on his ownership as well, he's actually dropped 30.5 from 30.5% down to 24% after being out over the past week, really, because he was out for the bye round in round 16. But interesting that his ownership has dropped that much, and I imagine it will jump back up again because he's at a very, very juicy price point of 489.6k, dropped 19.7k on the weekend, and has another break even of 173 heading into the game against Essendon this coming round. So I think you could probably go early on him, in all honesty, if you really, really want to. The Dons looked absolutely putrid, like my mob, on the weekend, losing to Richmond, and he might have a bit of a day out. Who knows? Wait and see there. But Harry Sheezel, he was the second best performer in my defence alongside Jordan Clark with a 123. A nice return to form here. And it's what we've spoken about in previous rounds, really, because he's had some up and down scores, really role dependent. Off the back of his past 2 weeks of 60 and 94, he's come out with a 123. Really love to see that. And ended up having 29 disposals, 6 marks, 6 tackles, 2 frees for, and 1 against. So thank you, good old She's Nuts. Check out these She's Nuts. And also check out Jack Sinclair. Now, a little bit disappointing in the context that he started the round on absolute fire. I think it was on around about 30 or 40 in the first quarter. Only ended up finishing with a 106. So him, Zorko, and Whitfield all had 105, 106, 107. So I don't know what they were trying to do numerically, but yes, they've created a bit of a sequence there. but it's not good enough, really. Come on, Jack Sinclair, these aren't the ceiling scores that we know and love from you. And I would have thought with the attention going more so to Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller that he might have got off the chain and did early on, but really did, as I said, peter out. But hey, it's his first ton in a month, so we'll take that in that context there. Now, Callum Mills, I was awfully wary about this in jumping on him, and he spat out a 55. And he's probably one guy who's almost getting into that rhythm now where it's every second week he's putting in a shit performance. Now faces North Melbourne in round 19, and you would think should bounce back, but he's passed 4 games read as 121, 56, 107, 55. So I'll be expecting a 120 plus score and then a potentially a 54 score in round 20 against the Giants. Hopefully one of those comes true in the fact that he should score quite well against North Melbourne, but very frustrating, especially heading into finals for head-to-head matches, leagues, cash leagues, the all-important leagues that we have. So really pull up your socks, Millsy. What are you doing, mate? Angus Clark on the bench scored a 22, but he's just there as cover, break glass in case of emergency type cover. And Sardale Hawley is there for his defensive DPP status so we can swing some moves around if need be. Before we get into the midfield, let's just quickly go through the trades that we ended up executing, even though we spoke about it in our team talk episode last week heading into this round just gone. Ended up trading out Caldwell to Rosie and only cost me 32k. I was happy with that. It meant that I didn't have to dip into my bank too harshly, and also it meant that I could do that trade in one move, one trade. Whereas previously, I think I was looking at getting in the youngster from Geelong by trading out potentially one of Angus Clark or Zach Johnson. And that would have given me some extra money to go potentially Clay Hall up to Connor Rosie. Now, it's worked out for the better because obviously I've only used the one trade, but Connor Rosie, he went down injured. And I thought it was a plum matchup, great to get him in, facing West Coast. He wasn't scoring all that well, disappointingly, and went off for a dislocated finger and then didn't come back on. I think he was subbed out in quarter 3, potentially, or the start of quarter 4. I think it was quarter 3, and didn't come back on. So I'm a little bit worried now that it might be a bit of a worrisome injury that might, keep him out for a week or 2, which isn't ideal. I think at this stage, and it's probably something we'll touch on in a moment when we get to the trades, just in terms of when do we use these remaining injury trades? Now, they obviously have to be for long-term injuries or long-term suspensions, and there are a couple of issues that we have to deal with, potentially, with Tristan Cherry as well. He is on the block, and I reckon he's going to cop at least 3+ weeks for his hit on, it might have been Sparrow, one of the Melbourne players there. He had a bit of a stray arm and knocked him out clean cold, out as soon as he hit the deck, and not a very good look. And I think he will be rubbed out for multiple weeks. But again, we need to assess whether or not it's worth using one of our last 3 trades. We've only got 3 trades in the bank, and we've obviously got, 6 rounds to go, 7 rounds to go, 6 rounds to go. So it is a little bit worrying. It is a little bit worrying to go down to potentially 1 trade if Rosie's out for long-term and Cherry as well. Not ideal with 6 rounds remaining. I mean, we do have cover on the bench, as I mentioned in previous weeks, with Clark. We've got Clay Hall, we've got Zach Johnson, Boxall even, he played on the weekend. But up forward as well, we don't have any cover at the moment unless Campbell Gray returns to the Richmond side and Cooper Simpson to Freo's side when they both return from injury. And it's awfully frustrating, and it reminds me so much so of last season when at this time of year, and I spoke about it, there was Gawn that got injured, there was Took Miller, he actually went down injured. I reckon it might have been this round last year, and it's very eerie that Took Miller's gone down again as well. But he went down with, it might have been a wrist injury. I had him in my team, had to trade him out. Rankin went down with suspension, I think it might have been, for a head-high front-on bump, and then he got injured when he came back in for his return game. Charlie Curnow injured his ankle, and it was at the point as well, similar sort of structure to my team at the moment where of course we didn't have the flex, but I had 21 primos and I still was searching for the 22nd primo, which I couldn't do because I was just patching holes with injuries and suspensions. So hopefully it doesn't continue, and it's just a bit of a coincidence here, but it's not a good position to be in. And I hope all of you out there tuning in were listening to what I was saying in recent weeks, especially last week I touched on it, that we need to hold onto our trades as long as we can, because we're going to have weeks like this that we just had, where we have multiple guys getting injured, key guys as well, and guys getting suspended, where we haven't really had too many main suspensions as yet. Knock on wood that they don't continue, but I think Tristan Cherry is going to be probably hard-pressed to get off that charge, but we'll wait and see with that. But we will chat about that in a moment when we go through trades. But let's continue on going through the midfield side of things. So Zach Butters, he was our choice for the captaincy, and a great choice of that because he was our second highest scorer in our team behind Bont with 174. I put the VC on Dacos first up, and you would have heard me go through it in the main Supercoach Edge episode in the I'm the Captain Now segment, where I was chatting about matchups and everything else. And the one thing that really stuck out with Dacos, obviously good form in recent weeks, but coming up against Gold Coast, they were conceding the most points to opposition mids. And both of those combined, I just thought, why not? It sounds like a bit of a layup. We'll whack the VC on him. If it doesn't work out, we've got a couple of good options there in Bontempelli and Butters. If I wasn't going to put the VC on Dacos, it would have been on Bontempelli and then the captaincy on Butters. And I'm very lucky in the sense because I was, albeit fleetingly, thinking about potentially Rosie as the captain compared to Butters. Now, that would have absolutely killed me. It would have lost me 100 points extra and it would not have worked well for me. So in that context there, it could have been worse. But like we said, 154 from Butters. We will take that every single day of the week. And Dacos, 85. It was a below par game from him, albeit he was coming off a bit of a illness. I think he might have had the flu potentially. He had some sort of illness across the week heading into game day. And yeah, it was something that I did think about, but I thought, you know what, he's well enough to play. And if he was really under the weather, they probably wouldn't have risked him in that game. But it is what it is, high ownership, as we always say, and it means that you cop the brunt, whether it be good or bad in terms of the score that they punch out. Now, Bontempelli spoke about him, 174, a really, really nice game from him against the Crows. I was thinking it might be a nice game for him, but I just thought maybe the Crows might kind of quell him a bit. I thought Dawson might have sort of had a bit of a crack at him, trying to nullify him. Sam Berry, if he could have gone to him, I don't know, but yeah, we will definitely take that 174 because Bont has been putting in some stinkers as well in recent weeks. We jumped on him early, about over a month ago, maybe 5-6 weeks ago, when he was punching out some shit scores against North Melbourne and the like, when he should have been scoring well, finally repaying us. But it's after a lot of people jumped on him, I think, because his ownership now should be through the roof. And if it's not, and if you don't have him, get on him. Yeah, he's 38.5% owned. And when we jumped on him, which was the St Kilda game, where he punched out a 66, his ownership was 29.3. So since then he's gone 66, 177, 63, 133, 174. So he's the Bont. You've got to have him in your team no matter what. But speaking of primos underperforming, Max Holmes, and very similar to early in the season where he was kind of having a good game one week, the next week he goes shit. And I really, really hate inconsistent primos, especially when it comes to league and, you know, those cash leagues that can really hurt you when they have an off week and your opponent obviously doesn't own them. So he has, in recent games, had a bit of consistency about him. He's turned up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's passed 6 games, but this 72 is his equal second lowest score for the season, and he needs to bounce back. At least for the next couple of weeks, he's got St Kilda and North Melbourne. Hopefully he doesn't get the Windhager tag, and that goes to Baslinka Smith. But yeah, 72, just not good enough, really. Connor Rosie, now spoke about him, 53, a real hard luck case. And I really hate it when your primos get injured, no matter how highly owned they are, but especially on a week when you've just brought them in. Everyone else has been able to revel in their big scores. And here I was thinking that he was a layup, an easy trade from Caldwell injured to Rosie. And you know, it's going from one injured guy to the next. So hopefully it's not a long-term injury and it's just a pure dislocation, and, you know, you can strap it up and play on for the remainder of the home and away season whilst we have him in our team, because that will hurt if we have to trade him out a week after getting him in. So please, football gods, please, Supercoach gods, spare us mercy. We have Caleb Sarong as well, 95. Surprisingly, wasn't tagged. I was fully expecting him to receive a hard tag in this game, and just wasn't to be. It was very, very strange. But him and Brayshaw virtually ran free, which was good to see. And yeah, it was a welcome sight. Of course, he didn't punch out a ton. It was a 95, but kind of par for the season virtually for Sarong, because when he is turning up, It's only just over, and he's had a couple of ceiling scores, but we're still waiting. We're still waiting. So hopefully he can punch them out in the games to come. Chad Warner, again, another guy who's kind of had a bit of a par score for him, 84, below par, I mean, in terms of expectations for us, but he scored 88, 93, 96, 95, and 84 in his past, 5 weeks. So faces North Melbourne, hopefully a bit of a spike week for him, and can really repay us on a week where I think we need some wins in some of our cash leagues as well, so it'll be handy if you can do us justice there. Adam Chera, below par, 76, and he's kind of fallen off the wagon a smidge. His past 3 weeks look like 66, 89, and 76, and just not quite there. I mean, Carlton's team is just all-time low confidence form. It seems to be a contagion at this stage, but we'll just have to, ride the bumps with a grin virtually, because we've only got the 3 trades, and there are break glass in case of emergency type, usages of them. Now, on the bench, Clay Hall, 85, and it just really annoys me with McQualter, because I'm glad I kept him, because I was very close to getting rid of him in round 15, it might have been, when West Coast were on their bye, from memory. But like his full games that he has played, he scored a 88, a 68, a 52, bit of a down game there, but then a 78, 61, and 85. So he does have a bit of form behind him to indicate that, if you need to use someone as a bit of cover, that he could be the man to rely upon. So thank you, Clay Hall. And who knows, we might have to use him for a week or two for Connor Rosie. Zach Johnson alongside him was the starting sub. Was activated very early on because, of course, Nick Martin, unfortunately for him and for owners alike, went down with a ACL injury. It has been confirmed. So if you are an owner of Nick Martin, you'll have to move him on, unfortunately. But scored a 41, so it was okay. Was virtually just above his break even, and went up 1k. But of course, has already increased 137k. And just on him reminds me, Angus Clark went up 4.6k off the back of a 22 score, and has increased as well in total of 120.1k. So both of those guys there, right for the picking. Clay Hall, meanwhile, has a break even of 19. So really, you can hang on to him for as long as you can. I think we need cover at this stage of the season, so don't get rid of all of your bench cover in order to make upgrades, because we need to prioritise trading for long-term injuries. But Clay Hall, with him as well, he went up 35.5k as well off the back of that 85 score, and has increased 144.6k in total. So a very, very nice, profit that he has made for us, and could prove handy cover. Now, Hugh Boxall as well, he was played by St Kilda for the first time in, feels like zonks. His last game was round 12. So again, round 18, played virtually a full game for a score of 39. So not quite there. And I don't think he has the scoring pedigree to really trouble us if we need to use him as cover for any suspensions, injuries, all that sort of stuff. So he's just there for the moment. He's just, I'd much prefer to use him as a bit of a loophole. So if he goes out of the team for St Kilda this week, probably a good thing. For the rucks, we have Luke Jackson, 84, and you never like to wish injury on any player, but given Shrek Darcy is renowned for injury, hey, if he wants to have a week off, if he's feeling a little bit sore, we won't be against that, because Luke Jackson, of course, as we know, is a different beast as the number one ruck, but albeit he's still scoring okay, an 84. We'll take it. It's not quite what we want from him as our sort of number one, number two ruck, but we're going to have to sort of stick with it. And hopefully, over the next 6 weeks, that Shrek Darcy is rested or potentially played up forward more, just to sort of, rest his body and give Jackson a bit more time in the ruck. That will definitely be a very nice thing. Now, on to Tristan Cherry. The red hot cherry pie was a very stone cold cherry pie in this case. I don't know if he had lingering effects of, the knock that he sustained in the previous week, but he was definitely off his game. Only scored a 57, which was by far and away his lowest score for the season. Dropped 30.1k as well. And he only had around the ground as well 7 disposals, 1 mark. He still had 6 tackles, which is good, sort of on par with what he normally busts out. 1 free kick for, 3 against, and also 22 hitouts. And I think last time against Gawn, back in round 2, he scored a 136. So a really, really down game from him. And I thought it might have been at least a bit of a ton game for Gawn. Neutralising Gawn wasn't to be. So we'll have to really look hard at him. More so because of the fact that, yes, he did cop one of the Melbourne players in the head with a stray arm out of a ruck contest. He'd hit the ball out, and then the ball bubbled around. And the commentators were saying that he was trying to punch the ball. He wasn't. Let's just be honest with it. Tristan Cherry is, I'm not going to call him a thug, but he is someone that loves to put his body in and do some damage in that sense there. And hey, it was bound to happen sometime or another. Very similar to Nankervis. They kind of operate the same way. And I think he's going to be out for at least 3 weeks. I'll be surprised if it's any less than that. Could be even 4. So we'll, of course, chat about what we do with him when we chat about trades in a moment. Harry Boyd for St Kilda in R3 didn't play, of course. For the forwards, Baz Linker, another disappointing game from a fellow cat like Holmes, 73. Now, could cop the Windhager tag, and in all likelihood, probably is due for another down game. But again, 74.3% of teams do own him, but you can take it to the bank. Your opponent that you have this week in your all-important cash leagues, work leagues, all that sort of stuff, they won't have them. It just always tends to happen. And of course, he will be tagged into oblivion, but hopefully not. Jack McRae continued on with his nice scoring of tons with a 108 and has scored over his past 4 games, 131, 91, 116, and 108. So his ownership actually went up by 1.2%, so people are jumping back on him, and for good reason. He is the 4th best ranked forward at the moment and should finish as a top 6 forward. So again, if you don't have him and you are in the market for one, I do recommend Jack McRae. Isaac Rankin, I think this is the first time he's gone back-to-back tons since round 7 and 8. So a really welcome sight here from good old Isaac. Kicked 1 goal, 2. Could have been more had he converted those into goals, but had 18 disposals, 6 marks, 4 tackles, 4 frees for, 1 against, and the 1 goal, 2. So thank you, Mr. Rankin. Christian Petrarca had a very, very putrid day in terms of use of the footy, disposal efficiency. It's always the one thing that holds him back from the big scores. And when he's had a massive score, that at least his disposal efficiency is half decent. But in this case, it really wasn't. It was a very dirty day from him because he still had 31 disposals, 5 marks, 3 tackles, 1 free against, and 1 goal, 2. Normally, he would be scoring 120 plus easily with those stats. Wasn't to be. Butchered the ball all day and was a really off game not off game, but kind of in line with his disposal efficiency on most weeks. It can be very impactful, but again, disposal does let him down. Caleb Daniel, 102, and par for the course for him, which is good to see. And we have Sam Darcy. He's been a little bit disappointing. His past 3 games, 73, 73, and 79, after that big 144 that we all jumped on him for and really enjoyed. It's a bit of an interesting one because he scored the 5 goals, 2 in that game against Richmond, scored a 144. Since then, he's scored 3 goals for 73, 4 goals, 2 for 73 again, and then 2 goals, 2 for 79. So hopefully he can have a bit more of an impact on games and convert that to scores. And on the bench, both injured, Campbell Gray and Cooper Simpson. And then in the flex, our all-important rookie, Dynamo in Tom McCarthy, punching out an 87 and also went up 62.7k to have now increased in total 176.3 with a -4 break-even heading into round 19. So that is my team. And with that, let's go through our trades and what we're looking to do now. So it is contingent upon, obviously, news coming out about Rosie. Hopefully, it's not long-term. If he's out for 1 to 2 weeks, I think we will definitely hold him and we'll have to just grin and bear it. And hopefully, we can loop a Clay Hall or a Zach Johnson and their scores on field, and they are able to average around about 85. Of course, Clay Hall scored an 85 on the weekend. Zach Johnson, when I needed him last week in round 17, scored a 79, and he has had previous scores of 84 and 84 in rounds 13 and 14. So both of these guys, I don't mind as sort of break glass in case of emergency type cover. They're actually elevated a little bit better than that, I think, in terms of that tag there, but I don't mind it. It is contingent upon Boxall not playing, or at least one of, potentially Johnson getting dropped as well, and Boxall playing to maybe loop either of these 2 guys here, but we'll just have to wait and see how the cards fall with regards to selection, and obviously hear the news on Connor Rosie, and hopefully it isn't long-term and he can continue playing with just having those fingers strapped up. Now, Tristan Cherry, I'm not as bullish on. As I said, I think he's going to cop weeks for this hit. If you haven't seen it, check it out. He's on Twitter. I think the AFL website might have it as well, but he's going to be out. He's definitely going to be out, and I think it's probably a good time because I don't know, I don't like having players that have been concussed, their game back, they usually score quite poorly anyway. I don't know what the if there is some sort of trend there, but that's kind of what I've noticed. And looking at his, I guess run home, he would have, if he was to play and wasn't to get rubbed out in round 19, faces Grundy, Geelong, not a bad matchup, St Kilda with Marshall, Briggs, GWS, Richmond with Nankervis, and then Rolly O'Brien with Adelaide. And I was actually eyeing off a fellow ruck that a lot of people jumped on early in the season, one of the more informed players, and it is in the form of, you've guessed it, Misogoni. Now, Misogoni, he makes us all horny because the great man has had some really nice form. He's in recent times dropped off a bit. Tends to happen. He's been the number one ruck for over the course of the entirety of the season, and he's due a couple of down games. Mind you, he's played Wits, who is really, really, I think is the most nullifying opposition ruckman in the game. Rolly O'Brien, I think, might be as well at a guess, who he's played across both of those games for scores of 90 and 79. Bounced back to the 112 against North Melbourne. Mind you, a game where he scored a 67 back in round 2. And the previous time that he played Wits in round 3, he scored an 88. So it's kind of par for the course here. And due to these down games, he's dropped from a 731.6k price tag now to a 574.9k price tag. So this is, I think, the bloke to jump on. If you haven't got Gawn already, he's owned by 32% of the competition. He has a really, really nice fixture coming up. He's got Carlton, he's got St Kilda, he's got West Coast in Flynn. He's got Tim English, who does give up a bulk of points from memory. He has Meek, who I think is probably a little bit of a tougher opponent, and then Darcy Cameron as well. So let me just have a look in terms of what it looks like for matchups for upcoming games. So let's just squeeze at this. So for the rucks, we have Melbourne. So he's got, apparently Carlton's a tough team to score against. Maybe that's with, of course, with Pitnet there, because normally TDK gives up a fair bulk of points, but Carlton's in the red there. St Kilda is an easy team to match up on. West Coast as well. Western Bulldogs in the green, and Hawthorn give up some points as well, and then Collingwood. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 6 remaining games, he actually should score well against with some very nice matchups. So I'm very, very bullish on Gorney. So here's one that I have in mind for a straight swap. The other good thing with Gawn and Cherry is the fact that there's only a 1.4k difference between going Cherry to Gawn. And I imagine, unless you're really cash-strapped, you will be able to make this move. So, as I said, I'm expecting Cherry to be out for 3+ weeks. If that's the case, and just speaking of which, probably wondering what would be the mark to then, say that we need to pull the trigger on our remaining trades, long-term injury or suspension trades. Like, when does that happen? When do we have to look at things and be like, okay, well, what's the pass mark where we have to say, okay, we have to trade this guy on? So for me, I think we've only got 6 rounds of the season to go. And if a bloke's out for 3 weeks, that's virtually half of the remaining season to come. So we don't want that. If it's 2 weeks, you could probably get away with it, albeit in the ruck. I mean, we obviously don't have any cover here. Unless, of course, you have swings, you are rolling potentially with a 3-headed dragon with, 3 ruckmen. You might be able to swing, a player out of the flex into another position. If it's potentially a Jackson with a forward ruck, DPP swing, you might be able to do that. But I think we're kind of hamstrung here. Our hands are tied behind our back. We need to get rid of Cherry if he is out for 3 weeks. So for me, I think it's a given. Gorney, 79 and 67 have been his lowest scores for the season. Outside of that, we all know the run of scores that he's had where he's hit those massive ceilings: 122, 145, 117, 174, 198, 142, 119, 153, 110, 131, and 126 were a stretch of games from rounds 4 to round 14. And that's the time where he actually went up in price to 731.6 across that stretch. In fact, his highest price was 744.8k. So for me, he is hands down the option for me. I imagine a lot of you out there already own him. If you do, you might have to look at the likes of a Darcy Cameron potentially, even a Marshall if you don't own him. If you've got money for Brodie Grundy, do you pay up to get him in? I don't mind it. Don't mind it at all. Faces North Melbourne, of course. If Cherry doesn't play, which he shouldn't, he should get rubbed out. He could have an absolute field day. And I'm talking 170 plus. So he's got a break even of 162, which is quite hilarious because he could actually smash that good old Grundy. But yeah, he's passed, look at this, past 6 games, he scored 161, 155, 159, 179, 127, and a 154. Just craziness. And now he's priced similar to what Gawn was only a few weeks ago, 737.8k. Has a decent run home, or thereabouts, okay. I mean, he's got, obviously North Melbourne without Cherry. He's got Briggs with the Giants. He's got Essendon with Goldstein, who gives up a fair bulk of points. Brisbane, a bit of a tougher matchup. Geelong, and then ending with a very, very nice matchup against Flynn from West Coast. So I think we'll have to go with Gawn because, look at this, with Grundy, we fall $600 short. And I don't really know if I want to go down that route anyway. I was against getting in Gawn when he was priced at this price point, when people were forking out the money to get him in, and now are finding themselves in a position where they don't have, enough money in the bank to make moves to get rid of a Cherry for an equivalent player. Or, Cherry's okay because if you don't have Gawn, you're fine. But otherwise, you might have to try and scrounge a bit of cash via an extra trade. But Grundy's not going to work. So I don't mind Darcy Cameron. I don't mind him, albeit he's okay. He's had a few hundred scores, but his ceiling is kind of lacking a smidge. Wouldn't touch TDK. Rowan Marshall, who I punted the other week because he was annoying the shit out of me, is, believe it or not, turned things around as he always does. So when I traded a player. So he had a 55, 89, 80 Marshall, and then has scored since I traded him out 124, 159, 135, and a 100. Absolute prick. But anyway, he's an option as well if you need someone in a pinch. Nankervis, potentially another one as well. And Lloyd Meek is another one to look at. But for me, in my case, I'm going for Maxi Gawn. His average is it's the best of all the ruckmen, just still ahead of Brody Grundy, who has a 121.4 average, whereas Gawn has a 123.6. But if you have a look at Brody Grundy's past 3-round average, 153.3 and a 154.8 for his 5-round average. So in some sublime form, and is a big, big pod with 3.6% ownership. But for me, as I said, Maxi Gawn, Miso Gawny, get him into my team, and it leaves him with 2 trades. Now, I'm hoping that Rosie is not out, because it means I'm already down to 2 trades anyway. I'd much prefer to keep 2 trades up my sleeve for the remaining 6 rounds. As I said, I like to try and keep averaged out to half a trade per rounds remaining. And that would have allowed me, going into rounds, with 6 rounds remaining, with 3 trades up my sleeve, had I not had to trade Cherry, would have been obviously half a trade averaged out across each round. So I don't mind that. So now at the moment, it's averaged out to, a third a trade per rounds remaining now. So not the best at all, but we have to do what we have to do. And if, as I said, I am preempting it, that Cherry's going to be out for 3+ weeks. If that's the case, he's gone. And even so, if it's out for 2 weeks, I don't think we can hold him. You probably could, because we've got the flex now to help us out with that extra player, provided that you have guys that are on the bench that can cover, well enough. So it's up to you if you have that up your sleeve, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously, for the definitive call when the MRO officer, the MRO, comes out and delivers his verdict on Cherry, and of course when we hear news about Connor Rosie. But aside from that, ladies and gents, that is how we're looking, and hopefully we don't have to use any more trades. We were looking to try and get a 23rd, primo in, but as I said, Tom McCarthy is performing well enough as it is. It would have been handy to have another primo coming in and then playing McCarthy off the bench to try and get rid of these guys that have the big deviation in their scores, like a Callum Mills. That would have been handy. I could have put Callum Mills on the bench and maybe played McCarthy and, made those sort of moves for the remainder of the season. But with 2 trades, we don't have the luxury to do that, unfortunately, I don't think, as yet. So let's quickly go through captains and vice captains. We will, of course, go through this in greater detail in our weekly episode. But I think for me, before locking things in, who do we have here? So Butters faces Hawthorn. Does he get tagged? How's he go in previous rounds against them? Pretty good, 135, 127, and 105, which isn't too bad. Nicky Dacos faces Freo. He could be one as well. He has scored well in 2 of his past 3, a 76, 130, and then a 130 again. So I don't mind that. I don't trust Holmes or Basilenka against St Kilda, purely because of the fact that Windhager will be tagging one of those two and we don't know who. I think maybe we might go with Miso Gorney. First up, faces Pitnet and TDK. How's he gone against, actually not the best, 111, 84, and 103. That's interesting. Interesting. But he might be one to look at, potentially. He might be the one to look at. West Coast and Richmond play each other, so there's no real matchup edge we could find there for opponents facing both of those teams, given they're facing each other. Maybe Le Bont faces Brisbane. He has scored not too good, 99, 89, and 108 in his past 3. He's at the Gabba as well. Maybe we go Whitfield, as I mentioned, against Essendon. Could this be a field day? He's only scored a 100, 112, and 89 in his past 3 against them. But, yeah, I don't know. Do we go for him? Yeah, I'm not too sure. We'll leave things as is for now with the VC on, it'll probably be on switched up. So VC on Butters and then the captaincy on Dacos. I think Butters might be our best option anyway. Or we could go the C on Gawn. We'll just have to assess things a little bit later on when we look at matchups and stats and where we can exploit those side of things as well. But that is it, ladies and gents. That is it. Thank you, of course, for joining me once again. And hopefully you escaped most of the carnage. I think you would have been in a very luxurious spot had you escaped all the carnage that we saw on the weekend. Took Miller getting injured. Of course, Nick Martin getting injured. Rosie getting off injured as well, subbed off injured. And, of course, Tristan Cherry having an off game and losing his head figuratively and almost literally, I think, from the previous week with his... It might be a bit of a lingering concussion symptoms, who knows? But he was past fit to play. Probably would have been a good thing had he not played because he wouldn't have whacked whoever he whacked, Sparrow or whoever it was against Melbourne. But with it, ladies and gents, we will leave things there. Let us know your thoughts if you are watching us on YouTube down below in the comment section of the round that was, how you went, and of course, thoughts about my position I'm in at the moment. Do I hold on to Rosie if he's out for the next 2 weeks? 1 week, I think I'll definitely hold him. 2 weeks is probably on the side of, I might hold him for 1 week and then assess after that. But it seems as I've mentioned in recent weeks, the injuries, the suspensions, they start now. I think the last 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season, this is when it tends to happen. Guys, of course, getting put in for early surgery from those teams that have no chance of making finals, another possibility. So we really need to be on our toes and have trades up our sleeve for these moments. So hopefully you don't have to go down to 1 or 0 trades, but what will be. And hopefully you have a bench that's built out enough to give you some cover at the very least if you are lacking in trades. But that's it, ladies and gents. Thank you as always for tuning in. And of course, if you are watching us on YouTube, feel free to give us a like, give us a sub, because that's the best way to let us know you're enjoying our content. And likewise as well, if you are tuning into the audio podcast side of things, feel free to give us a rating, which you can do, I think, on podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And also you can give us a review as well. If you have some time up your sleeve, let us know how we've gone across the season of 2025. And we really do appreciate all of your feedback and kudos. Just heap it on us. We love that. But thank you, ladies and gents. Once again, we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.